So welcome everybody to LTL IMPACT 2. We are joined by Yinka Alalade and Shannett Thompson, who will be discussing a seat at the table. So without further ado, I don't want to waste any more time. I'm going to hand over to Yinka.
Thank you, Tenny. Good afternoon, everybody. So a seat at the table. I'm just going to dive right in. And so Shannett and I have known each other for almost 10 years now. And really at the start of her journey at Kingsley Napley, KN for short. But before we talk about her journey at Kingsley Napley, Shannett, can you please just give us a bit of detail about your experiences, your route to qualification, the roles that you held pre and post qualification before you got to KN?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, sorry everyone for the technology issues, but we're here and we're live and we're going. So basically, I just born and brought up in Hackney. My parents are both Jamaican. We're not born in this country, so I'm kind of first generation born inside this country. Went to comprehensive school, didn't go to any private schools. Went to university, did the legal practice course. You know, you hear the buzzwords that everybody's got a training contract. I've been trying for some time, didn't get a training contract in the second year of uni like they advise you to do so that you're ready to go once you get out. I got my first job at 16 anyway. I was working at Marks and Spencer's, so I continued working there and kind of started as kind of Saturday checking out and then moved up to supervisor, etc. So I've always been a bit of a go-getter, to be perfectly honest. So I continued working there all the way through university, all the way through legal practice course. And actually that gave me something else to focus on so that I wasn't just constantly thinking about the fact that I hadn't got a training contract yet. Yeah. And then I got to kind of maybe 1 year post legal practice course and thought, I probably should get my first office job now. And I applied for a job. I became a kind of the equivalent of a paralegal at the Revenue and Customs. So I was doing that for about 18 months, carried on looking for training contracts. Equally, you were getting those rejection letters and just feeling it every time, and it chips away at you a little bit every time that you get a rejection, especially when you think you've aced that interview or that assessment, etc. So I thought, okay, let me make a move. And it was actually my sister that said to me, I think you're probably going to need to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. So I was on the civil service jobs website and I saw an NHS jobs website and I saw a job come up for a legal advisor, but it was for a post in an NHS trust in Bristol. Up until that point, I'd always lived and worked in London, and I just thought, you know what, it will be a good experience. I quite like healthcare anyway, so if I can mix healthcare and law, that would be awesome. Went for the interview, and kind of I remember that when I got the phone call that I'd got the job, because I was coming out of the High Court. I'd just finished filing our petitions for the insolvency service, because that was the service that I was in at the Revenue and Customs. And I picked up the phone and got told, oh yeah, we really like you, would you be able to come down? And I was like, oh right, okay. So I had to kind of get myself together and move within the case of 2 weeks.
Wow.
This job. And then I'd been there about 6 weeks, I think. And the whole purpose of the job was to deal with claims, clinical negligence claims, employer's liability, personal injury, and pretty much anything that came up around the trust. There was some commercial stuff, property. And then about 6 weeks, so the guy that was the head of legal services at the trust. So the trust had 5 hospitals and there was 1 legal services department. So we were dealing with everything for all of those 5 hospitals. And he was one of those super clever people that had been a chief pharmacist before, then cross-qualified and became a lawyer. So working for him in one way was daunting, and in another way was absolutely awesome, because there was nothing this man does not know. I've still got a really good relationship with him now. And he just called me and he said to me, oh, I really like you. I think you worked really hard. Would you like a training contract? And I just sat there in the office thinking, did he just say what I thought he said, or is my mind playing tricks on me? And he said, he goes, I'm registered to take trainees, but I don't advertise because I don't want people coming to me just on the premise that they want a training contract. But when I see people that are willing to work hard and I know that will do it, I'm all for it. The only thing is you have to fill in all of the forms yourself and get it done, but I'll be completely behind you. And I just went, and that was it. And I just went for it, got signed off, and that was the start of the journey, I guess.
Wow, do you know what that just shows? That it's a windy route to success sometimes. I think people think success looks like this, but oftentimes it looks like a big diagram, big scribble. I don't
absolutely.
know if people have seen that that infographic before, but I think you are a living, breathing example of the fact that it's not just always straight up, and it takes a few opportunities, somebody willing to advocate and open the door. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you for setting the scene in that way, just for people who don't know your background.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So I qualified there, but the thing about the way that the trust was set up was that there was only one qualified position. So it meant that if I stayed there, I would have to stay there as just a legal advisor, and I wouldn't have been using my practicing certificate. So he said, you know, absolutely whatever help you need from me in order to go on and get NQ jobs. So I basically signed up with an agency, as everybody does, interviewed at quite a few places. So Yinka will know some of these. I interviewed at the General Dental Council, interviewed at BLM as it was then, the firm, it's got a different name now, interviewed at Radcliffe the Brasser and another place. And the funny thing that happened was I got offered the job at both the General Dental Council and the Radcliffe the Brasser. And I was like, I don't know. I got a nicer vibe from the people at General Dental Council, but it was in-house. And I was like, do I want to go to private practice now that I've been in-house for a little while? So there was a barrister that I met while I was working in Bristol. That's another thing to say. I didn't know any solicitors, didn't know any barristers before I entered the profession. So there wasn't anyone to get that advice from. And I'd met her and I just said, could I have a chat to you, please? And she said to me, you need to go into private practice, because you need to get it under your belt now at the beginning of your career, because if you don't do it now, it's harder to switch the other way. So I said, okay, fine. First time in life that I've ever turned down a job. I had to turn down the General Dental Council, and I went to Radcliffe the Brasser, and her advice was spot on, because obviously I'm still in private practice, and had I not made the decision at that time, it may have been harder. It's not impossible. It is definitely harder to go from working in-house into private practice than the other way around. So I stayed at Radcliffe the Brasser about 3.5 years, and then realised that my development wasn't really going anywhere there, to be perfectly honest. Great team, absolutely amazing lawyers, but just me personally, my journey wasn't going to be there. And then applied to KN and joined there in May 2011.
Wow. As the leader of LTL, I'm just thinking, yeah, this is why we have LTL, because you need people in your corner that are going to give you the real, who have maybe walked that path before and don't want you to make the same mistakes, or have seen how this thing can turn out and want you to do things a bit differently. So a lot of things came out, and I really appreciate you setting the context in that way. It came out that you need people in your corner. You need to listen to people who've lived it before, and also to be a bit enterprising about your career progression, not just think it's going to just be, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this.
I was one of those people, no doubt about it, because I know that I work hard, and I know, I mean, I'm not one of those people that I would say, I've met lots of those people at uni that are just naturally clever. They could do a coursework the night before and get a first. I'm not one of those people. I have to work hard in order to do it. And I think because I always thought, you work hard, it will all fall in your lap. It's not quite like that in the commercial and the corporate world. There are backstories that someone has put in the chat that make things happen. And I think for me personally, I needed some links. I needed someone to advocate for me when I was outside of the room, especially not coming from a traditional background. It's, you know, the reality is law is elitist. We can't get away from that. 100%. We hope it's going to change with the introduction of SQE, internships, and lots of different paths into law, but the fact is it is elitist, and there is still a lot of nepotism. There's still, unfortunately, a lot of, if you are black, brown, or anything that is not white, you have to work 10 times harder than other people in order to get there. And the one thing I don't do, though, is I don't say to people, don't do it, because of the fact that it's hard. If you wanted it to be easy, you shouldn't have joined this profession in the first place. This is not for the profession for the faint-hearted. Let's just get that out of the way. You have to have the, and I don't say you need to be taking abuse and battering, etc. Not at all, because I've obviously spoken to a number of people that have worked in certain firms where they've been mistreated, and there's no other word for it. And nobody has to tolerate that. It doesn't matter where you come from. And it's knowing when to say, this is no longer serving me, and I need to go elsewhere, and I need to change my path. And I think that's what's very important for people to understand. I got to a place at a firm when I realised it was no longer serving me and I needed to leave. It was affecting my well-being. We weren't going to continue to get along. So therefore, you need to make the decision and leave. A lot of people don't. they stick it out thinking, oh, I've got to stay here, I don't want to jump, I've put in, it's like a relationship,
so much time and stuff like that, and
it's time to learn and move on, and it's important you have your 5-year plan, but know that your 5-year plan can take deviation, and don't be scared of that deviation if it's going to get you to where you want to be anyway.
Amazing. So okay, so you get to KN May 2011.
May 2011.
Yeah. How long were you, so you went in as an associate, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so how long were you in that role for? And then what did your route to partnership look like from that time that you entered KN?
So I applied for senior associate in 2015. Not the one good thing, but one of the most pivotal things that is important about Kingsley Napley is that the promotion competencies and procedure is very clear. It's black and white, it's written out, you know what you expect, you know what you're supposed to do. Right. So I applied for senior associate in May 2015, got that was fine. Then I struggled a bit in order to get to partnership, and that's not surprising because partnership is such a big thing in an LLP. They're essentially sharing their riches with you. It's not the same as kind of being an employed person, etc. So that was tricky. So I felt around maybe 2017, 18 that I was ready to get in the mix. I was told I was not ready to get in the mix. And sometimes you just have to take that and digest it and think, okay, where do I go from here? Because at that point, I had a lot of people saying to me, well, maybe you should just leave and go somewhere else, maybe somewhere else. And I just thought, actually, no, I really like Kingsley Napley. There's lots of good things about it. Is it perfect? No, but then nowhere is. We're not in Neverland. You're not going to find that anywhere, actually. So I took on board the feedback that I got, even the parts of it that I didn't agree with. And there will always be some parts of the feedback that you don't agree with, and you just have to professionally challenge it. And what I did find at some points that was tricky to deal with is when you get told, oh, you handled that really well. Why wouldn't I?
Exactly.
I'm a lawyer, I'm a professional person. Just because of the fact that I come from a different background for you, it doesn't mean that I don't hear what you're saying. It doesn't mean I don't understand the feedback that I'm receiving. I don't have to take it. I just do with it what I will, and make sure that when I come back to you, that the way in which I've addressed it means that you are comfortable with whatever it is that I've done. So it took a good kind of 3-year lead-in period actually to get to partnership. So I started kind of knocking at the door 2017, and it wasn't until kind of 2020 that I got the green light. So equally, I think I need. Oh no, go ahead, Tenny. Sorry.
Just because I don't want you to run away with that point. So I hear a lot of people within the collective say that, you know, they don't know how to get to the next level. Now, it seems that up until senior associate, the transparency was there. You knew exactly what you had to do to get to senior associate, and then thereafter is a bit more hazy. What are the reasons for that? And what would you say to people, just if you could weave this into your answer, is that something that we should all look for, that transparency in terms of what it would take to get to the next level? Because I can definitely say from an insurance context, like, depending on what firm you're in, rather, it can be quite unclear. So just wanted to...
And I would agree with that. I think up until, even though the competencies for partnership are clearly written in black and white, there are lots of, especially at Kingsley Napley, I think most firms actually, there are lots of different types of partners. Some partners are doing fee earning work, so they still get muck in and casework. Other partners are kind of more marketing and BD partners. So they do that. I'll bring in the work, but then I'm handing it over to you. And then there are some partners that are more management partners. So they do kind of the risk, they do kind of palms work, etc. So there are lots of different people, which is why it makes it a slightly more hazy when you're moving to partnership, because you assume that all partners are the same, that they all do the same type of work, that they're all expected to bring in the same, but actually the partners are very different models. So you not knowing that and not knowing where you're going to fit means that when you are making your pitch for partnership, it's quite tricky to know how to put it. So for me, my pitch, and I have no problem with sharing it, for me, my pitch was, you kind of need me because, to be perfectly honest, before this point, you've got, you know, some Black and Asian minority partners. I have to say there are now, I think, just come up 70 partners at Kingsley Napley. 4 of those are from a Black and ethnic minority background. So whilst we are above the 1% average for the city, we're still by no means weighted, as you can see. And when I got contacted recently about the 1% survey, I didn't even know that figure. I did not know that less than 1% of the partners across firms in the City of London come from a Black and ethnic minority background. So if you look at that figure, and considering how many partners there are and how many law firms there are, that shows you what we are fighting against. It's not going to be an easy road, to be perfectly honest, which is why a lot of, and the SRA and the Law Society statistics tell you, that's why a lot of people go to smaller firms, and there's nothing rude about it. They go in-house, they go to particular practice areas like immigration, crime, family. Those are the areas that they can see that they're easily going to get that transition period. And that is not to be derogatory about any of those areas. They are absolutely pivotal and important areas, but it is because where we naturally see a fit of where we're going to be given the opportunity to come into the door, rather than the more corporate, etc. areas where we have a harder time. And that's the reality of the situation. So I think one of the things I would say to people that are thinking about the journey is, from that kind of 3-year mark, when you're working along your plan, start working on your pitch. Had someone been able to tell me kind of the 3 years before, that's what I would have done. I would have started working on my pitch, understanding what, and I hate it, but what my USP is, but it's true. What's my USP? What am I bringing to the practice that nobody else is going to? How am I going to let them know that even though I haven't done what I said that I am going to do yet, that they can have the trust in me that I'm going to do it? Because that's what you're doing. You're saying, I'm going to bring this business into the firm. I've already done some of it, but I'm continue growing it. I'm going to continue being an ambassador, an advocate for this firm, not just growing my brand, but also being a positive ambassador for the firm. That is what you are essentially selling. You are selling yourself as a commodity to them so that they're willing to let you into the fold. So my top tip would be, start working on your pitch as soon as you realise that that light bulb has gone off in your mind, and that is what you want.
And I think there's no shit. So a lot of us are, you know, one of few. I think that dynamic that you've just expressed is true of insurance as well. I know there's a lot of insurance listeners on the call, but there's a mix of people on the call. But that being the minority, or being not many of you in the firm, is very true of a lot of industries. Now, if your ticket to the top is because you're from a minority ethnic background, when you get there, what you do is not going to be all about you being Black. But if that's your way in, think about all of the other people who got in because their cousin or their dad or their uncle. It's the same kind of dynamic. So if I feel like there's sometimes a shame, like, am I only getting this because I'm Black? Somebody else only got it because that was their cousin. Somebody else only got it because they had friends with blah, blah. So don't feel that doesn't make you less than. When you get there, then you do the work. But if that's the way in, sadly, that's the dynamic that you find yourself. But that doesn't have to be the label that you carry on with for life, that kind of thing.
And Tenny, I know it was one of the things that you raised with me, the kind of the tokenism part of it. And the one thing that I would say is that if you are at an organisation, whether that is a law firm, whether it's kind of a corporate entity, insurance, whatever, if you are only being given the position because of the fact that we need to tick a box, that is tokenism. If you are being given the position because not only are you smart, are you hardworking, that you put in the hours, that you're willing to be a positive ambassador both inside and outside, and you happen also to be Black or Asian, that is fine, because they are ticking the box, and we know full well that the government is looking at statistics around diversity. But if you think that you are simply being put there because of the colour of your skin or your ethnicity or your religion, etc., you have to carefully think about how you're going to be treated once you get there, because the other people around that table that you've just got a seat at will know that you've been given that because of tokenism. And it will become apparent very quickly because of how you are treated. And because also when you're coming into that type of fold, you're coming into partnership, you're not a partner at the time that you join. You're a senior associate that's just been promoted, that is working towards getting there. You've shown the attributes, but you're not 100% polished. You're not the diamond already, because otherwise there would be no point. There would be no point in giving you that promotion. And the one thing that I was very clear about at Kingsley Napley was asking, what support am I going to be given? I've given you this pitch, I've given you what I would like to do, but what marketing, business development, finance support, etc. am I going to be given to make this happen? You can't make it happen as a one-man band, and you will realise when you get that seat at the table whether or not people are truly rooting for you, advocating for you when you're outside of the room, and actually want you to be there.
I had to say that because I think a lot of us are minoritized in our various firms, and then we think we have to prove, and but no, our counterparts don't come in through various routes, but don't feel like they have to keep showing and proving. And like you said, we are entitled to that support in the same way. And I remember joining my grad scheme and looking around, and my company was very, very not diverse, and then my intake for my grad scheme was very diverse. And I still, I sat there for like months thinking, I'm only here because I'm black, I'm only here because I'm black, I'm only here because I'm black. And I was like, no, you did an internship beforehand, which lends itself well to the role that you've been put in. I looked around and I thought, okay, yes, I was probably the most appropriate fit for the role that I was given. So it took a while to shake off, but I was like, I'm here because I deserve to be here, and I happen to be black. We can't change the color of our skin. Like, that is just is what it is. So you can't carry that around as an issue. You shouldn't, not shouldn't, because we're all entitled to our feelings, but don't let that be something that makes you minimize your achievements or makes you minimize why you're at the firm that you're at, because they hired you because of you. It might also tick a box, but ultimately, if you were just a box tick and you sat there and you folded your arms, my dear, no one's going to pay you. So.
No, exactly. And that's what's important. I think that the thing that's interesting is that Yinka's been there throughout the whole of my journey, because obviously we met when I was, newly at Kingsley Napley. I was an associate when I met you. So, the journey clearly hasn't been that straight linear journey that everybody loves. It's kind of, and there were times when I thought, oh, is this profession really for me? How am I going to deal with it? It can be tough at times, but then equally, there are lots of beautiful days like this where I get to speak to other people, where I get that really good result on a case, where a client just sends you that lovely email telling you how much of a difference you've made. So you've got to balance up all of those days and look at the glass as half full for me personally. If you look at all of the negatives of it, because there will be, and it's the same in any sector and or profession, then it's a long slog to retirement, people. So the perspective and the positivity around it.
Yeah, I think we've touched on the tokenism aspect of it, and it was something I was going to ask later on. But just thinking about those 3 years from 2017 to 2020, when you were now, working towards that, how would you say you were treated? Do you think it was fair in comparison, or just
not entirely? No, I'll be honest about it. I don't think it was entirely. There were times when I felt that I wasn't being given the same opportunity. So I wasn't being handed the same opportunities as others. I was having to kick basically the door in a little bit to get the opportunity. There were others that I felt, I was passed over when, why is it they got that and I didn't? What is different between me and them? Actually, probably nothing. And I think, so not entirely, but I think that was across the board, no. I think there were certain individuals, as there will be in any profession, any sector, as I keep coming back to, that I suppose because they don't, and we've all got a likeness bias, we know that we all have it, and because you are not like for like, sometimes they give it to the person that is like them and they have the same affiliation to. But the funny thing I will say is that the people that I have found throughout my career so far who have been my biggest champions are people that are completely opposite from me. So my training principal was a white middle-class man from Bath, had never seen East London before, but the man was the biggest champion that I've ever had in the entirety of my career. And then when I got to Kingsley Napley, the same. Yinka knows who I'm talking about, one of the partners who's from New Zealand. She's been one of my biggest advocates. We don't have anything in common if you look at us, but actually when you look at the kind of our values, etc., and the way in which we approach work, we're very similar. So I think it's not just, don't ostracize yourself. Don't think, as much as that saying birds of a feather flock together, but you actually have to be able to get your seat at the table. You're going to have to be able to affiliate with other people, understand how they work, be able to be on their level as well in relation to certain things. It's the same thing when we're working with clients. A lot of my clients, I don't know their story. I know what they're presenting me with, and I've got to be able to get on their level. And I think that's another thing that's really important in the corporate world. You're going to meet so many different types of people. You don't need to agree with everything that they say, but you need to find a common balance to be able to work in some level of harmony.
Yeah, I like that. I'm hearing that, you know, yes, you did have those challenges, but through that you were still able to, you know, find people who you could draw strength from, who could support you, even though on the face of it, you didn't, you know, necessarily have anything immediately in common with them. So I think that's a good takeaway. I like that. Just thinking about your journey. So obviously, so for those who do not know, I worked for a healthcare regulator, and Shannett's firm were a firm that we instructed. So we had interactions in a professional capacity. So for me, seeing you being referred to and getting your flowers essentially, you know, from massive publications like Chambers UK and Legal 500 UK, it just makes my heart sing. So for you, you know, obviously we had our dinner and drinks last year when you were made partner, but how did it make you feel? How do you feel now that you are partner? You do have a seat at the table, and how would you say your life has changed, if at all?
There's a couple of aspects to that. One, I still pinch myself a little bit because it doesn't still feel as real. And when I get asked that, or when people say to me, "Oh my gosh, you're a partner." I did a podcast with someone, and they said, and I was wearing my mask at the beginning because we had to go into the office, and he said, "No offense, I know I can't see your whole face, but I can see enough of your face." And he was like, "No offense, but you look pretty young to be a partner at this type of firm." And I was like, I'll take that as a compliment, to be perfectly honest. And then we just had a really cool conversation about it. So I think there's a lot of aspects to it. I feel really privileged because I know that there are so many, especially women from Black and ethnic minorities, that didn't get here and wanted it, and they didn't quite make it. So I think I feel humbled, privileged. I still feel like the fire in my belly to keep going. As much as and Tenny touched on this, as much as I know I have made it, I also know that there's a lot for me to do, not just in terms of positive role modelling for others, because that's one of the things that gives me the greatest joy when I go to kind of Bright Network, etc., and you get a queue of people waiting to talk to you, and sometimes they just want to say, "That was really inspiring and thank you, because I was thinking about whether this was for me." So there's lots of kind of mixed emotions in there, but the biggest emotion is that I am absolutely thankful that I am at the place that I am at.
Well, you know, I'm super proud of you, so so okay, we've talked a little bit about some of the things that you had to do. What would you say you had to sacrifice, if at all, for the seat at the table?
My social life. Social life. I think there's been a lot of times that I can look back over my profession, and not just at KN, before that as well, where, you know, you wanted to be out with your friends that did slightly different jobs from you, etc., and I was putting in extra hours. There's a lot of aspects, and I think it's tricky. That's why, especially, sorry to say it again, but coming back to women, why we often get asked that question of, how do you juggle? Sometimes you don't, actually. Sometimes what you do is just sacrifice one for the other. And I definitely know that I have done that throughout the time of my career. There's no doubt in my mind. I think of some situations where you think, I wish I'd gone on that date, or I wish I'd done, you know, you just didn't, because you were, and I'm just keeping it real, you were sacrificing it and thinking, actually, this is important for this, etc. The one thing I feel very proud of, though, is that I don't feel I've had to sacrifice who I am and the authenticity. And that kind of accolade came to me maybe about a month ago when someone was leaving Kimsley Napoli, actually, and she said to me, "I just wanted to say, I've not said it to you before, but I feel really lucky to have known you, and it was nice to see that someone could be authentic and become a partner here, because I felt like I needed to change myself, and that's why I'm leaving." And I felt really sad that she felt like that, but then also really proud that obviously it comes across that I am me. Obviously, we've all got a professional face. I'm not bumping in the office to Mary Jo Blige every minute. I didn't have to fundamentally kind of unblack myself in order to get where I needed to be, and because I can't do that, I'm sorry. I'm so pro-black, like every culture, like every race, religion, etc. should be, that I just felt if I'd needed to go that far, then it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So the sacrifices are worth it then?
Yeah, the sacrifices I made, and I mean, some of those people would have been waste men anyway, so it was fine, to be fair. But yeah, you know, there's times when you wish that you'd had a little bit more fun, because nobody goes to their grave wishing they'd worked harder. Well, not unless you didn't work at all. But you know, there's times when I wish I could have had a bit more fun, but it worked out in the end.
Amazing. Did your expectations, were they met? You know, so what you were thinking it was going to be like, and then you get there and then you're in this reality, you know, you're waking up, you're a partner, you're going to work. Did they match, or was there a disconnect somewhere?
The funny thing is, it's actually more than what I expected. I knew, obviously you know what a partner is and you know what they technically do, but if you've never done it, you don't know. And actually, when I got into the fold, it was even more positive than I expected, actually. There's obviously the trepidation with it that, oh, these people are waiting for me to bring in all of this business that I said I was going to, and I didn't get any client calls this week. So you get that. But on top of that, you actually join a club of really, well, especially at Kingsley Napley, because that's the only place I can talk about it, but you join a club of really awesome people who actually, you're not going to get on with everyone in exactly the same way, but are really supportive, really go-getting, quite commercially astute, such that when they give you, so for example, yesterday I was on radio for the first time ever. I've not done radio before, and
drop the deets later so I can look for it.
I'll send it to you. The guy that I was on with, he's not someone whose views align with mine, and just before he had been making comments about the monarchy and about the Black Lives Matter movement, etc. And I just thought, oh, I'm going on after that. But actually we got on really well. But the point that I'm making is, before I went to do that, one of the partners in the criminal department, who I am an absolute fangirl of, I call her Auntie, she's one of the amazing people. She was like, you'll be fine. But the 3 things that I will say to you are this, this, and this. Go in there, do it, and come out and we'll talk about it. And there's always someone like that in the partnership that I can go to. That is, whether it's a case, whether it's just a kind of a niggle of a doubt that I have about something, it's not grabbing. It's not people trying to trample over each other. And if you, the thing I need to say again, because it is really important, if you are somewhere like that, where you're finding that there's no support, where people are quite out for themselves, etc., unless you are that type of person who can be really shrewd, etc., and just kind of elbow and step over your granny to get it, then it's not the right place for you.
Wow.
I like that you've said that, because I think a lot of people's perception of the top is that it's a hateful place. You're going to find out, you're going to get kicked left, right, and center. So it's good to hear a positive story. We don't get many, and we don't actually have that many people to speak to about what it's like to actually live it. So it's great to actually hear someone be there and have a positive experience. And if it's not positive in any relationship, you should leave. So
it's no different from your personal to your professional. If it's not serving you, if it's not making you well, etc., you need to find some navigate out of that situation.
I have a couple more questions, if you don't mind. So you've already shared quite some really helpful advice and nuggets, but what would you say to somebody what else would you say to somebody maybe in the legal profession and also in other industries who they're trying to get to a seat at the table?
Yeah, first thing first, work out why you want it. Do you want it because of the fact that that's what you've been told happens? Because obviously, whether it's, like Teddy, insurance, whether it's any type of corporate environment, to be perfectly honest, the model is this. The model's not supposed to go like that people start. But actually, who said that? Who said that has to be how it is? work out why you want it first, because if you want it for the reason that you've been told that that's what you're supposed to do, then actually it might not serve you and it might make you happy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, once you've worked out that you actually want it, as I've already said, have your pitch. No matter what sector you're in, when you're going for a promotion, you're selling yourself. You're giving them you in a package. Imagine kind of when you go into wherever you shop, there's something about it that attracts you to buy that thing. And you've got to approach your story in exactly the same way. Whatever it is that you are giving over, you need to put the gloss on it and not lie, because that's not what we do. But you have to give the best positive spin that you can about what it is that you bring to the table before they will give you the seat at the table. The third thing is, look for your mentors and your champions. At that point, when you're kind of that 5 to 3 year point before you're going for the promotion, there's no point in waiting until you're about to put in your application for a promotion to say, who are the people that really advocate for me? Because when it comes to the time that they're going to be discussing your application, one of those people needs to be in the room. And I knew that one of those people was in the room. Actually, I had 2 in the room. And it was important to me to know that. And the good thing is that those people I had really honest and open relationships with, that they said that they were ready to fight my corner when my application came out. And then they were pleasantly surprised to realise that they didn't need to, because all it was, yeah, Shan's a tick. Pass. Amazing. But if they had needed to, they were ready to have that fight. And if you don't have that, it can be really tricky. And
you can't build that overnight.
Absolutely. You don't build that overnight. You build that by doing the good work, putting in the hours, sometimes building up personal relationships with them. And that's why I say it's not always people that look and sound like you or come from where you come from, because mine certainly aren't. The next thing I would say is, it depends on the profession you're in, but certainly for the legal sector, networking is huge. It can be uncomfortable when you first do it, because you're basically walking into a room of lots of people that you don't know, some people that you do know. And the classic thing to do is to like flock to the people that you already know and just talk to them. Those people already know you. They're already going to send you business. They're already going to be the people that you take out for lunch. You've got to start spreading your wings to all of those other people that don't know you. Hand over business cards, tell them about what you do, find out what they do, what's the reciprocal arrangement that you can have in order to build each other's platforms. And that's something I've definitely found kind of LinkedIn, etc., is really good for. So I think it's kind of that 5-point approach. The other thing I think you need to be is real with yourself about the fact of, is it going to happen for you now? Is it going to happen to you for a year? Is it going to happen to you in the place that you are in? Is it going to happen to you in the current you? Because one of the things is, you have to be prepared for it as well. It's not just the fact that they are giving you an opportunity. You've also got to be prepared for that opportunity, because if you're not, you're going to throw yourself into a fold that you're not ready for, and it's not going to go well. And you don't want, after all of that hard work, and it's happened to a number of people that I know, that they get the seat at the table and then actually they're just like, oh, this was too much, actually. I didn't want this. I probably wanted it for the wrong reasons, and I'm coming out. And no one wants to be in that. If you've made a positive decision of kind of the 5-year plan was to get the seat and then move, do you. But if actually that's a longevity thing for you and you want to see it thrive, etc., just make sure that you've done your homework like you would do with anything else.
Amazing, thank you. The last thing I would want to just get your views on is, if you know, thinking back on the journey, is there anything that you wish somebody had told you, or that you wish you knew before you started?
I think I wish I had known that it is nothing like law school. You know, you go, you know, you do all of this work and you pass all, and obviously you need to do well, otherwise you're not going to get into the types of firms that you want, or the in-house departments or government legal service. You need to do well. But I think someone had just told me that practically what you do is completely different from there. That would have been really helpful.
Thank you so much, Shan. Tenny, over to you.
Okay, so we've heard a lot from you, and even though I have nothing to do with the legal profession, I've learned a lot from your journey and your story, and it's given me a glimmer of hope. I do really want to get through these questions because we've had some people who were so keen, who sent questions ahead of time, and we have 3 to answer on this call. So I want to make sure we get through them before the call ends. So the first question is from Diana. She asked, did you find that there was an issue getting clients? As I heard, the city firms are reluctant to hire BAME due to client objections.
Yeah, there are some firms that are like that. Praise be, Kingsley Napley is not one of them. Otherwise, I won't be talking to you from their platform. But there are some firms like that. I've worked at a firm that is like that. There is no doubt about it. There are some, and I mean, we still get clients. I'm literally just last week, a client called up and said they needed to speak to someone with my specialism, but they wanted to speak to a man. So it's not just about colour, it's also about gender as well. And, you know, my PA just went back and said, well, she's a she. So, you know, if you want to speak to her, you can. And if you don't want to, we can refer you to the Law Society. There are plenty of other lawyers on the roll that. And then by the time that we spoke, he was the person that sent me this gushing email saying, you were so empathetic, etc. I will definitely be recommending you to other people. And sometimes you just need to be able to, it's tricky because there are certain things that you wouldn't accept in your personal life that sometimes professionally you have to be able to scramble over. If that had been in my personal life and someone said, I don't want to deal with a woman, the response would have been like, well, that's your business. And whereas professionally, you have to kind of tread that line of being careful to stick up for yourself, but at the same time doing it in a way that does not kind of undermine Kingsley Napley and or you, to be perfectly honest. And it's the same when it comes to colour. There are absolutely, I don't think it's ever going to stop happening to me that there are times when people speak to me on the phone, don't realise, and then when I meet them in person, because they've not looked up my profile, they realise, oh, okay. And you can see it on their faces when you walk into the room, and they'll usually say something, oh, I didn't expect you to be that young. And you think, that's not what you wanted to say, actually. But okay, whichever way you want to play it. But actually, when you know your stuff and when you're good at what you do, I have never had a situation yet where that person has not come around. And if they generally don't, they never were going to, because of the fact that they have an underlying issue with working with someone who is of a different ethnicity, culture, etc. from them. So
yeah,
that's that.
Great answer, great answer. The next question I have is from Priscilla. Having a seat at the table, do you find it difficult for your voice to be heard? If so, how do you navigate that? But if it isn't the case, can you provide any tips on how you do this?
I've actually got a full firm partners meeting this afternoon, and the one good thing I have to say is I don't have any problems with my voice being heard. As you probably can tell, I like to speak and I will talk my mind, but equally, if you're somewhere that's not supportive, even the most kind of tenacious person will feel kind of silence. The good thing is I haven't had that experience. I certainly do know, Priscilla, that there are other colleagues around the city that have, not just in London, but further afield. I've joined a lot of the networks and I've met a lot of people and realised that that does happen to them. And it always makes me feel quite saddened that they are not able to speak up, not only when they have great ideas, but also when they're struggling, etc. And the support. So I think the tips that I would have from my perspective as someone that has been heard is use that voice wisely. Because I think one of the pressures that I definitely feel as a Black woman that maybe a white man or a white woman, etc., does not feel is the fact of that positive role model. And now I've got a seat at the table. I need to be the beacon for other people that are coming up underneath me. I think when you are non-white, you feel that pressure, but perhaps when you're white that you don't. I can't speak from that perspective. I've not been white, but the people that I speak to that I can have honest conversations with have told me that they don't feel that pressure. They feel that they're just representing them and that's it, because there are a lot more of faces that look like them than there are faces that look like me. So I think be very careful of how you use your voice. Make sure that even when there are difficulties, that you approach it in a way that does not cause, unfortunately, the angry Black Asian person stigma to be attached to you, because trust me, there are too many opportunities for people to just tar us with that brush and then say, well, look, we gave them a chance and look how that turned out. It won't be the first or the last time I or someone else hears that. So I think just use your voice very positively once you are there. The other thing is, if you have a good idea, which we all do at some time, make sure that you go to the right person with it first. Because if you go to the person that's a naysayer, they will do exactly that. They will be like, no, maybe not. And then you probably let it go. And actually, if you'd spoken to the right person about it, they would have been like, I love that. How can I help you? Let's make it happen. Sorry, I think the third thing that I would also say is when you are working, even when you've got your seat at the table, I've got a box. So I've got a folder in my inbox where I put all of my brainstorms, all of my, those little gushy emails that you get from a client after you've done some press, the feedback, put that all in that box. Because trust me, when you need it, when it comes appraisal time, your next promotion, your next whatever it is, trying to find that stuff is so hard, because you think, I remember, and put it all in there as soon as you get it, so that you've got that evidence there. If anything ever is raised, because we've all been there, that you think you're doing everything right and it's going well, and then someone says, you're not quite performing how I thought you would be, you need your evidence. Back yourself up from the beginning. And the one thing you've got to remember about any type of corporate professional environment, there, it runs on money, and money talks. It's not really about people, to be perfectly honest. So you have to be covering your back from beginning to end, not because of a particular person, just because of the nature of the beast.
Honestly, you said so many things that I think the collective can relate to, and this is a lot of the conversations that we have, and so I'm so happy that you've echoed some things I've said from an untrained mind. You've heard it from someone who's at the top now, so you guys can take it. But honestly, yeah, and even somebody, Marie puts in the chat that the experience you shared about, walking into the door and people not expecting you to be Black, that, that's something that she can relate to as a biracial woman, and she's writing an article on that. So we will look out for that, Marie. I've got one last question for you. How did you show up in your journey to partner? You've touched on this a bit in the conversation, but how much of your authentic self did you hide, and has this changed since becoming partner?
I think the thing that I most hid was when I became my first NQ position, I hadn't relaxed my hair up until I was 25. So when I got my NQ position, I relaxed my hair because I thought that's what corporate needed to look like. You needed to have straight hair. There wasn't people on the TV that were rocking the fro, etc., etc. So I think that was the first thing that I did, and it took me a considerable amount of time before I was willing to transition back to my natural hair and wear braids, etc., etc., all of which I've done now, and they can take it or leave it. I think that was one of the things, definitely, in terms of my authenticity, that I noticed that I just did it as a natural. I didn't even second guess it. I just went, I need to relax my hair now. I'm about to start the big job. And then it was just, and I didn't realize clearly how much all of those kind of westernized styles of beauty had obviously affected me, because I shouldn't even have had that conversation with myself. I should have just carried on with my natural hair as I'd been up until that point. But clearly I felt it, and then I got to 30 and was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And I just was like, yeah, this is it. That was the first thing. I think the second thing that I hid a bit at the beginning, but now don't do anymore, was how different my kind of school holidays, etc., were from other people. So, when you come from where I come from, and parents like my parents, who I absolutely love and adore, my summers were very different from yours. I wasn't rowing, I wasn't skiing in the French Alps, I was going to Jamaica, I was running around with my cousins, learning things about, lots of different parts of my culture and where my family are from, etc. And I think that was part of me that at the beginning I found tricky. Especially, I remember my first day at law school, where we were just introducing each other and where you're from, etc. And I was just listening to the conversation of people, and there's nothing wrong with it, because that's their background. They should be proud of this. But feeling like I couldn't join the conversation because I didn't have anything to put in there from what they did. So I think I hid that and just kind of would just stand there and listen or chuckle, and not put my 2 pence worth in, well, I went to here and I did this, and this is where my family are from. But I don't do that anymore, as you can tell. I'm just openly willing to tell everybody about me and mine. And so I definitely did that. And I think also, as I've got older, I've got more confident as well. I hope that's just something that happens naturally to everybody. I've definitely become more confident as I've got more experienced as well, not just older. I think it's just having that appreciation of who I am and where I'm from, and knowing that that's never going to change, and actually I'm really proud of it. So I want to sing about it. So there have been some things. I'm still not quite going to, you know, bump Bashman in the office, but you know, maybe that will come in the next 5 years, maybe. You see, but yeah, definitely there are some things that have changed, but other than that, I think I would like to think that I've been authentic. Other than that,
oh, we've got a follow-up question really quickly. Did you relax your hair after or before your interview with Kingsley Knapley?
Before because I actually relaxed it. So my NQ job was at Radcliffe's the Brasser. So when I was interviewing for my NQ roles, I had a very nice straight weave. And then once I got off in the NQ roles, I relaxed my hair, and the first day that I went in, my hair was relaxed. So they hadn't seen my natural fro at all, because they wouldn't have known it was a weave. And then I just transitioned and I was relaxed hair.
I'm glad we got to the conversation of hair, because it's such an important thing. I know for Black women in particular, like, it's a statement. And actually, I was so determined. My sister can vouch with this. I had a fringe before this, and I was like, no, I'm going to make sure for LTL Impact I'm having braids. Literally, it didn't even make any sense for me to get braids that evening, but I was like, I'm having braids regardless to make a statement. But it really is a big thing. So I'm glad that, hope whoever asked that question, you feel validated by the fact that it is important, and it's something, whatever is important to you enough for you to ask a question is important. And so, you know, you do get to a level where you can bring all parts of you to a table, but it does take time. So if you're still on that journey, if you're still like thinking about it, and it's still like something that you are about, don't beat yourself up about it, because a lot of people are feeling.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I will say about hair, it doesn't matter. I still like to rock a weave. I still like to do whatever you want to do it, but just do it knowing that people around you may make the comments, and people still do. Oh, your hair didn't look like that yesterday.
Literally.
My friend, don't put your hand in it. We'll do that for you. It's okay. Let's have some personal space. But I think just recognizing that those experiences, that you are not alone, and talking on platforms like this and to your immediate colleagues just takes that weight off sometimes, and just makes you feel like I'm not in this alone. And there's lots of women from different walks of life that go through it, not just Black and Asian women, but we find that sharing our stories shows you that you have commonality, even if you're not from the same place. There are lots of crossover. I'm one of the people in our Reach network, which is our race equality network, and she's Russian, and some of the things that she tells me, I was like, oh, I've had that. It's so strange, isn't it? So having these conversations are really important.
It's so good that you said that, because literally our next conversation is talking about the experience of being white but from non-English backgrounds, and what that experience can be like. I think this particular impact has been all about experience sharing, has been all about the story, whatever it is, and us owning our own voice, whatever that looks like. And just hearing your story has given me hope. I'm sure it's given our listeners hope. When my sister, the background to you even joining our call was that my sister had shared your link to your YouTube session. So if you want to see more from Shannett, you can search Shannett on YouTube, and you'll see her summarized story. But we got the in-depth, deep, the real.
We got the tea.
We got the real tea on this call. So I'm really grateful for you giving of your time, because I know your time is expensive. It's billable.
Time is money.
No worries, no worries. And equally, you know, if there's anyone on the call that wants to drop me a LinkedIn and share that way, etc., I love hearing from people and other people's stories as well. So just my name on LinkedIn, drop me a line, and yeah, let's talk.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much for joining our call.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Thank you to Yinka, who's part of LTL, and my sister, for those who don't know, for facilitating the conversation. It's been great having you. If you do have any questions that didn't get answered on this call, if you send them to myself, or Shannett has left the door open for you to message her directly, please do. And we look forward to seeing you on our 3:30 discussion, which is called White Other. Other than that,
thanks so much, guys. Take care. Bye.
Bye.